Welcome, everybody, once again to another episode of B&B Hockey Talk. I'm Aaron Bloxhole with my co-host, Mr. Matt Balzer. This is, if you're watching this near dinner time, grab the Stanley Cup, grab your grandma and fill it with pasta like Alex Petrangelo, and get ready for our show. As we're during the dog days of summer, there's not a whole lot going on, but we're going to update you with everything that's been happening the past week around the NHL. And Matt, start us off with the latest trade.
Yeah, so the Chicago Blackhawks continue to reshape their roster. They traded Artem Anisimov to the Ottawa Senators for Zach Smith. I think to Anisimov's, I don't think he'd be overly thrilled.
It's a good trade for Ottawa, but I don't think he's going to be happy about it.
Yeah. So I think, Zach Smith, like we know, he got waived. I forget if it was at the beginning of the last season or during early in the season. So he was a player that Ottawa had been looking to move. And then with the trade, I think Chicago frees up a little over $1 million in cap space. And I think the only guy that Chicago still has left to re-sign is Brendan Perlini. And then I think they have a little over $4 million in cap space. So they got room now to get him signed. And then Zach Smith, like, I think they're two different players. I think he had 28 points last year in 70 games. So he brings a little bit more grit, along with like Andrew Shaw, who they brought in to offset sort of like their skill. And right now I think he will be the third line center, but I think it sort of depends on what Kirby Dach is going to do.
Kirby Dach did get hurt in the Chicago rookies camp. They showed his hand, and it. Go look at the highlights. His hand, he must have got slashed or something, but his hand, his fingers, something was definitely broken and not right.
Oh, no, wasn't that Dylan Cousins with?
You're right. It was Dylan Cousins.
Because it was his pinky, and it got like dislocated. It was like, it was all out of place. Yeah, that was gross. Looking, but that is something worth looking up. Dylan Cousins with Buffalo, that pinky finger did not look good. Because if Dach makes the lineup, their center ice position is actually going to look pretty good with Taves, Strome, Dach, and then most likely Smith as their fourth line center. So that actually looked pretty good. And then with Anisimov. He brings a little bit more of a veteran presence because they got Cullen White and Chris Tierney as their other two top six centers. So he's a guy that can move up and down the lineup depending on where they want him. And then I'm not sure where guys like Logan Brown will be coming up in the lineup next year, and he's another young prospect that plays.
Don't forget Alex Formenton as well.
Yeah. So Ottawa, they should be better next year. How much better? Probably not much. But they do have a lot of young guys coming up in their system.
Are you expecting any player interviews of the owner again before the season starts?
Last year, one of the most cringeworthy. And I still can't believe out all the guys that got was Mark Borowicki. It's just so bad.
He'll go down to being the interviewer for the rest of his career, right? Like, man, that was terrible. But a bunch of guys have also re-signed as RFAs, or also we have some free agent signings. Mm-hmm. Let's go over that list. Let's get everybody up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, so the big signing was Ryan Dzingel signing a 2-year deal with the Carolina Hurricanes at a $3.38 million cap hit. You'll basically be replacing Michael Furland in their lineup, but he had a really good year. He had 26 goals, 56 points last year between Ottawa and Columbus, and I think he was one of those guys that was looking for a longer term contract at bigger money, but he just wasn't able to find that fit with anybody.
Well, and don't forget the Carolina Hurricanes farm team, the Charlotte Checkers, won the Calder Cup in the AHL this year, and they've got a lot of good prospects. So expect Carolina to be pretty good next year. Guys like Jake Bean are going to come up and make a difference, I think, in that team.
Yeah, and then Julian Gauthier, who was their first-round pick a couple of years. It might have been actually in the same draft as Jake Bean, because I think they might have had a couple first-round picks that year.
Martin Nishkash as well is the other one that stands out.
I can't wait to see Nikash, especially if he gets in the top 6 role, like it does look like. I'd be super excited to see him and like maybe Svechnikov together on a line. So, man, yeah, Carolina's gonna look.
Just don't fight Ovi.
Yeah, as long as their goaltending is going to be all right, because if Mrazek can do what he did last year, and if James Reimer, he didn't have the best year in Florida last year, but he is a guy that I believe can bounce back this year and sort of be like what Curtis McElhinney was this past season in Carolina. The other 2 bigger names finding new teams was Josh Archibald signed a 1-year, $1 million deal with Edmonton. He had 12 goals, 22 points last year with Arizona, and he should provide a little bit more depth in Edmonton. And Michael Del Zotto signed a 1-year, $750K deal with Anaheim, who he actually played briefly with before the trade deadline, where St. Louis picked him up. So those were the bigger names.
Good on Del Zotto to find a team that will take him as well.
I know, yeah. Well, especially with Anaheim, because they need to add a couple more veteran guys, because otherwise they're going pretty young this coming season. And then for re-signings, Andre Burakovsky got a 1-year, $3.25 million deal. And also Colorado also re-signed JT Compher to a 4-year, $14 million season at $3.5 million cap hit. I think both of those guys could potentially be top 6 players this coming season. And then also Carolina signed a couple more guys. They re-signed Hayden Fleury to a 1-year, $850K deal, and Gustav Forsling, who they acquired from the Blackhawks, to an $874K deal. I think those 2 guys will be battling with Jake Bean, I think, for like that last spot.
And they got an incredible defense already. So,
well, yeah, that top 4 is crazy good with Pesce, Slavin, Falcon, and Hamilton. So, man, even if they ever want to move one of those guys for another top 6 forward,
they've got the young guys coming up that can take that over, I think. So,
and then of course the biggest signing for the RFAs was Jordan Binnington got a 2-year extension. With a $4.4 million cap hit, just ahead of Jake Allen's cap hit. He's at 4.35. So I think
that means they're almost $2 million less than Florida's starting goaltender.
But yeah, I think it's nice. A lot of teams are turning into like this 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
Sort of tandem where one guy doesn't have to play 60-plus games, where one guy can go 50, 30, or closer to 40 games each. And this is sort of like,
it reminds me of the 80s when you had the Canadians with Vaughan, Brian Hayward, and the Oilers, Moog and Grant Fuhr. Even the Flames had Vernon and Lemelin. They did a lot back then where a goalie would only play 55, 60 games tops as a starter. Until, the dead puck era when Brodeur started playing, 76 and 78 games. And then Fuhr did the same thing for Buffalo and Toronto back in the day. But before that, like I said, in the 80s, there was a lot of teams that would play 2 goalies. And I like it a lot. I think it really makes the goaltenders fresh come playoff time. Because you saw Marc-Andre Fleury last year for Vegas. He looked absolutely dead tired.
Yeah, and then a lot of teams are stressing that way, because there's only like a couple teams like Freddie Anderson with Toronto is like one of like the few goalies that's is going to get closer to that 60, 70 games, even though they're trying to work back his workload over the season. But with Michael Hutchinson or Garrett Sparks looking as his backup, it's going to be another for him. In that, a couple other signings. Washington Capitals signed Jacob Vrana to a 2-year deal at $3.35 million. Washington's like just getting right up to the cap ceiling. I think they're just under $1 million, and they still have Christian Juice and Chandler Stevenson still to re-sign. So they'll be able to sign one of those guys, but I think they might have to move one guy out to get if they're going to be bringing both of those guys back. Ryan Donato got a 2-year deal with the Minnesota Wild at a $1.9 million cap hit. He was part of that Charlie Coyle trade, and he actually did really good with Minnesota after that trade. He had 16 points in 22 games. And he's actually one of those few younger guys on Minnesota in their forward group, because outside of like him,
I'm still trying to figure out what Minnesota's doing.
yeah, it's so weird because like you got like outside of like Kevin Fiala and Jordan Greenway, and they're still high on Eriksson Ek there as well. It's like they're all guys that are like around that 30 plus age range, which yeah, it's just one of those. I think Bruce Boudreau, he might be one of like those guys, one of those head coaches that could be on the hot seat right off the bat, depending on what they're doing. And then the Montreal Canadiens re-signed Joel Armia to a 2-year deal at a $2.6 million cap hit. And they also re-signed Arturi Lehkonen to a 2-year deal at a $2.4 million cap hit. A couple Finns there alongside Jesperi Kotkaniemi. It'd be cool if they all play on a line, and there is actually potential that they all play on a line next season. And I saw in a comment, it's like it's actually cool to see a lot more Finnish players coming up in the NHL. It's not just like the goalies and the couple superstars. You're starting to see a lot more depth guys or younger guys around the NHL there.
With a name like Joel Armia, you for sure know he's Finnish. Compared to, some of the other names that are out there.
Oh. And then, the Blues also re-signed Robbie Fabry to a 1-year $900K deal. And Jason Dickinson with Dallas got a 2-year deal at a $1.5 million cap hit. Scott Lawton with the Philadelphia Flyers got a 2-year deal at a $2.3 million cap hit. And those are the last of the bigger names. And one more that I'll throw out there, Cal Peterson got a 3-year extension with the LA Kings at an $858K cap hit. The first year of that deal is a 2-way deal, and the last 2 years are 1-way deals. And I'll be interested to see what LA does with their goaltending, because Jack Campbell's a UFA at the end of this season, but the way that he played last year, where he basically stood on his head and his numbers were way better than Jonathan Quick's when he was healthy. If they will go younger and look to move quick in a trade and go with Campbell and Peterson in the future. But yeah, that's those are the biggest signings. We got a couple other things to go over. I think we'll touch on Ron Francis.
Yeah, well, the news of the day, of course, yeah, you said it. It hasn't been officially announced yet. Nobody from Seattle has confirmed it, but it looks like Ron Francis is going to be the first general manager of the Seattle fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. And for me, I want to see what their team name is. I know a lot of fans are getting anxious of that. If you're watching the show, drop us a comment below on Facebook or YouTube about what you think the Seattle NHL team in a couple of years should be called. I know there's lots of good names floating out there, whether it's the Metropolits, the Sound Wave, the Kraken.
I think the Tomahawks was up there.
I've even seen the Sockeyes. So it'll be interesting to see what how they name it, or what they name it, and what their team colors are. I still think they should go with Seahawk colors, with that green being one color and dark navy blue as the other color. But,
sort of like the Seattle Thunderbirds, their WHL team. I think their jersey scheme sort of around like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Emerald City, for goodness sakes. Let's see some green, right? Mm-hmm. So Ron Francis is there. It sounds like he's about to be announced as the first general manager. And he's going to have a lot of people around him. They're talking about naming an assistant general manager and bringing in a lot of guys that are, good with the stats and all the surrounding support staff that's going to help him move forward. The analytics and everything will be involved there. What are your thoughts on that? I think Ron Francis as a player, one of the best that I've ever seen. Can't believe, that power play Pittsburgh used to have him and Coffey on the point with either Stevens or talking in front of the net and Yager and Lemieux on the side walls. Holy. But, and just look at his work he did in Carolina. They let him go, but, I mean, look, his team got to almost the Stanley Cup Finals this year. Huge improvement over last year. Their farm team just won the Calder Cup. I think that a lot of that was his work with just an owner that lacked some patience.
Yeah, because I was going to bring that up because he'd actually done a really good job in drafting players and bringing guys in, and it's also that I think with Dundon, their owner, he was looking to cut costs where he could. So with Don Waddle, I think he's like the president and the GM or whatever. So it's just removing a couple of those ranks as well. But yeah, I think Francis is a great pick for Seattle. I know Mike Gillis's name had been thrown out there for potential GM spot, but yeah, I think Francis is a great pick, and it's just surrounding those guys or surrounding with a good group because we saw it with Vegas with Lawrence Gilman, who used to be an assistant general manager with Vancouver. He was big in helping Vegas out with their potential roster before he joined the Toronto Maple Leafs staff there. But yeah, it's going to be super exciting to see how exactly things are going to go because Vegas took advantage of a lot of teams getting a lot of first round picks and they got a lot of home runs and they were able to steal guys in trades like Riley Smith from Florida and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see the second time around how all the NHL teams protect their players.
Well, I think the NHL teams now probably have learned from their mistakes from the last expansion draft, but I think the players that are going to be unprotected are going to be better than when Vegas had their expansion draft. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of wheeling and dealing that Seattle does. Who gets picked? And I mean, Vegas, it's funny, they're already over the salary cap. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first ever year. And they got guys like Cody Glass still coming up in the ranks. I mean, they gave up Nick Suzuki and Eric Brandstrom, of course, in trades to bring in Pacioretty and Stone. They got a pretty incredible looking team right now, and it's an instant team. But for I guess whatever the cost is, I think it's $650 million for the franchise. It's nice to see that they're competitive right away.
Yeah, because Vegas, if you're just looking, you got like Alex Tuch on your third line, and he'd be a top 6 forward on majority of NHL teams. but yeah, it's just Vegas, man. If depending on what their defense looks like next year, just with some guys leaving, as long as but they still got the big names in Theodore and Schmidt and McNabb and all those guys. But yeah, Vegas could be going on another potential run next season. With the way their roster is looking up, and if they can somehow get Nikita Gusev on some deal, that'd be another great guy in their top 9. So, but yeah, I'm super pumped for Francis going there, and especially with us being in Vancouver, just to have like a natural rivalry with a closer. Because we got like
hours down the I-5, we could potentially go watch another NHL team instead of 8 hours drive if the mountains were good to Calgary. So it's definitely nice to have another team that's close by. Vancouver Canucks had some news. Alex Burrows' Ring of Honor night has been announced. Why don't you give us that update and then give us the final word before we end today's show?
Yeah, so the Ring of Honor date will be on December 3rd against the Ottawa Senators, which of course was the other team that Burrows played for. So yeah, it's actually going to be pretty close. Yeah, December 3rd, and then you got the Sedin's retirement in February. So it's nice to have them sort of like nice close together, seeing all those 3 guys honored in such a short time span. A couple other things to touch on is the Phil Kessel trade sparked a huge amount of growth in ticket sales for the Arizona Coyotes. So there was a 600% spike after the trade compared to the week from last season.
Yeah, so last year they sold 10 tickets and they're up to 60 this year, right?
Yeah. There was a 550% boost in total ticket sales. Wow. And a 94% renewal rate of season ticket sales, which was the highest since they moved to Glendale in 2003-04. So the Phil Kessel hype, like as much as he's a great player, but it's just the fascination of Phil Kessel and just how he continues to be as good as he can without to be like
And let me touch on this for a second. Arizona, I mean, adding Phil Kessel is nice as a team. Rick Tockett's doing a good job there. In my opinion, I think, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they might have been the number one team in the league last year with men's game lost.
Yeah, second most.
Second most, okay. And, I mean, they had a ton of injuries last year. And for them, if they're healthy this year, they might be a team that's pushing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, because I like their top line, like Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and Kessel, and then they got a lot of guys, younger guys like Christian Dvorak, who basically missed it all last season. It was basically a write off, and then they had some freak injuries like Michael Grabner took it was like a puck or high stick to the face.
Took a puck, I think, to the face. Yeah,
a bunch of time. Derek Stefan is still a reliable two-way center. They brought in Carl Soderberg. Their defense, I really like their defense with Oliver.
That's where they're strong for sure.
Goligoski, Chikrin, but yeah, and Jalmerson still all there. But yeah, and then
of course Oliver Ekman-Larsson, right?
And yeah, that guy is
that guy.
Player. And then their goaltending, like if it'll be interesting to see what they do, because with Ronta missing most of the last season with injury and the way Kemper was able to step up, it'll be interesting to see who will be their starting goaltender.
And their third guy, Aiden Hill, I mean, he stepped in last year during some injuries and had a pretty nice winning streak as well.
Yeah, so as long as Arizona can stay healthy, they could make a push for a playoff spot this year, especially because I think they're actually right behind Vegas for spending money this season. So yeah, they're the second highest spending team this year, which usually isn't where Arizona is. Usually they're taking on those bad contracts if they're sort of trying to reach the salary cap floor. But this year they're going all in, and as long as their guys stay healthy, they'll be sort of like one of those dark horses that could make the playoffs this coming season.
So final word, anything else to add before we end today's show?
Oh, one funny thing. So William Nylander is changing his jersey number from 29 to 88. And, of course, Leafs Nation lost their minds because the great Eric Lindros, who played all 33 games with the Leafs, apparently makes the jersey untouchable. I know Lindros, if you go by, well, he's a Hall of Famer. Great player in his heyday. If it wasn't for the injuries, he would have.
You don't think of Lindros as a Leaf when you think of Lindros.
Yeah, it's like you think of him as a Flyer. It's just like, well, because you start bringing up other like legendary guys that played the majority of their career with one team and then signed with another team. Like, well, Brian Leetch was like another guy that played with the Leafs, but you think of him as a Ranger. Like, it'd be like the Canucks, like saying like when Matt Sundin signed for like that half season, like nobody can wear number 13 because Matt Sundin played like 40 something games or whatever. And it's just like, but at least the cool thing with Nylander is that he said he would pay for any of the jersey changes for any of the fans if they brought in. He would actually cover the costs to switch from 29 to 88. But yeah, it's a number that Nylander's worn internationally and before that, so it just makes sense. And it's not like he hasn't changed his number before. Like he started off with, I think it was like 62, then 39, then 29, and then 88, and then now 88. So, and then Lindros actually on Twitter today actually wished Nylander the best of luck for the coming season. So it's just funny how fans can overreact at times like that. So, but yeah, we'll leave it off at that. And then,
and I saw a story on TSN as well about a fan that had some custom-made shoes that had Nylander's name in them.
Yeah.
And Nylander has said he's going to pay for that as well. So that good on Nylander for that. I think that's incredible to see a player in today's day and age do that for the fans. So
yeah, and we've been seeing with it's touching on more like the days with the Stanley Cup. Basically all the guys, when they bring the cup, they've either been going to the hospital or going into their community, getting pictures with all the people and all that. And just to leave one thing off, I think basically this week will be pretty quiet as I go on vacation. So a lot of the posts and stuff, if you see there hasn't been much being posted in the next little while, it's just because I'm out of town.
Yeah, it's like I said, we're in the dog days of summer, right?
But yeah, we shouldn't be missing a whole lot. I know a lot of the arbitration dates are coming up starting next week. So
yeah,
we'll see all that. But it should be pretty quiet over that time.
Remember to like and share our Facebook page as well. Hit that subscribe button right below here on our YouTube channel, everyone. as we get the word out about this show. We thank you so much to all our amazing fans that are out there for supporting us. A lot of St. Louis fans out there, of course, followed us through the Stanley Cup run. And we've got a lot of international people following us. So wherever, we're glad to be able to bring you your hockey fix wherever you are around the world. So thanks again. We'll be back next week with another episode of B&B Hockey Talk. I'm Aaron. He's Matt. Enjoy your week, everyone. And if you're eating pasta out of the Stanley Cup, use a nice big fork. Have a good night, everyone.